I'm Craig Dettman, Associate Professor of Lighting and Sound Design in the theater program at the School of Performing and Visual Arts here at USM. What you're about to see in this video is the process that I went through to produce the production Follow the Light. I'll talk about selecting the music for the production, the load-in process, and installation of the equipment, and many other factors that went into the production. As I explained in my written narrative, this production serves as my creative research component for promotion to full professor. And it premiered at the School of Visual and Performing Arts show called Revelry in February of 2021. This is a rock and roll lighting show. The music that I chose was from a band called Dream Theater, and they are a progressive rock band who often write conceptual albums or stories. The album is entitled Scenes from a Memory and is a follow-up to one of their earlier albums. It tells the story of three men who are involved with the same woman and deal with those struggles. Again, I go into the story more in my written narrative. The first song that I was drawn to was actually chapter 6 on the album, entitled Home. And I was drawn to this piece because of the incredibly complicated movement of the music. The time signatures are very, very difficult, and the shifts are incredible. And this would offer a lot of challenge to me as a lighting designer. Of course, I was drawn to the story of the whole album, and it's a very long album, and this piece really summed up the main plot of the story, I felt. I needed an intro, so I went back and chose chapter 1, which is entitled Regression. And while it does tell the beginning of the story, I also used it as a dedication to my father. And actually in combination with another piece that I used as the ultimate introduction. I chose a piece of prose by the author Paulo Coelho, who published The Warrior of Light, which was a series of essays that he combined into a book. I used a piece from that book, which was actually entitled The Warrior of Light as well, to begin the entire production. My father had a great radio voice. He was a radio announcer. And one of my goals was to have him read from this piece of prose for my production. And he's always been very supportive of my work in the arts. And so I thought it would be fantastic for him to record the introduction. I was going to do this during the winter break when I went home to visit my family. Unfortunately, he became very ill and passed away in December, and we were unable to record that. So I dedicate this along with the introduction music to him. The first part of the music talks about finding the light and finding peace in light. And I hope that he has found the light in passing and found peace, especially after what he went through before he passed away. Even before completing the entire score of the production, I began doing my light plot based off of the song Home, which was the bulk of the music in the production. As a theatrical lighting professor, I stress the fact that we, as lighting designers, have to light the performer. That is the number one goal of lighting design, to light the performer. And if we haven't done so correctly, we have failed. In this production, the performer is the actual light. So it's much different than anything we would see in a theater, dance, or concert setting. In the early stages of planning this whole project, I envisioned soldiers of light on the floor, rows of lighting instruments that were almost soldiers. And then I remembered the prose piece by Paulo Coelho, and that was one of the other reasons for adding that piece. So I gridded out rows, 9x9 rows of ellipsoidal reflector spotlight, 26 degrees. I had 9 rows in order to be able to have a center row both on the X and Y axis. These became my warriors of light and a huge part of the production. It was a toy that I could use that would also represent so much in the show. It was a lot of fun, an essential part of the production. Because of the COVID situation, we didn't have full crews in our shops. And so I depended heavily on a couple of grad students, but I also had to allow them to do their creative work. So much of this was done on my own. The focusing, circuiting, and building of the floor mounts took a lot of time, but it was well worth it. In the end, it helped to create a pretty magical product that I'm very proud of. Another major player in this production was the use of mirrors. A couple years ago, I saw the band Shinedown, and they used lasers that bounced off of mirrors at the foot of the stage. Now, I've seen hundreds of concerts and many, many lasers, but this was a reminder of the power that they had to create magic. We don't own lasers in the theater program here, but we do own 2 clay packy Sharpie. And these are very, very narrow beams of light that were very close to what I wanted to produce after seeing that show. So I bought some household mirrors and I cut them up. I then mounted them to 1x8 sheets of plywood and ended up with 24 feet of mirrors just at the foot of the stage. And then I used 2 vertical strips, 1 foot by 8 foot, on each side of the stage. This allowed for some variation. I depended pretty heavily on these for the guitar solos and the internal guitar riffs. It just added some variety from the other static lighting instruments, and it also created a sense of multiple moving lights when in fact it was only 2 of them being used at a time. The upstage part of the stage consisted mainly of the moving lights on the floor and the electrics overhead. I have 3 designated electrics, or battens, that are upstage of the proscenium that are designated for lighting instruments. I used many of the storage cases, placed the moving lights on the floor. We have 3 Martin Mac 250s, and of course the 2 clay packy Sharpies. And we also own 4 Lightwave Techno beams. We have 10 Elation OptiTri LED pars, and the rest are static lighting instruments. So while I had these moving lights, a big part of the challenge was to create movement with the static lighting instruments. In all, I used about 200 to 250 lighting instruments, and I think I was pretty successful with what I wanted to achieve. Our stock of ellipsoidal reflector spotlights range from 19 degrees on up to 50 degrees. I used as many 19 degrees as I possibly could because I wanted really narrow beams of light, and the 19s were the narrowest that I could get from our stock. So the plot uses strictly 19 degrees and 26 degree source for ERSs. While these are primarily theatrical lighting instruments, the fact that we weren't taking them on tour allowed me to essentially turn them into rock and roll lighting instruments. If we used this many static lighting instruments in a concert, we would probably use primarily park hands, as they did in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, the good old rock and roll park hands. But I didn't have any of those, so I used the theatrical ellipsoidal reflector spotlights, as well as my ETC Source 4 PARs, which of course are not as sturdy as the park hands. But again, we weren't touring. The board that I used was an ETC Ion. I've become very familiar with it and was satisfied for this project. There are over 2,000 light cues, not something that we would typically do in a 10-minute piece. But again, this production is about the light. It's about the movement of the light. Yes, I do tell a story with the music, and I try to stay true to that, but essentially the characters are the lighting instruments and the light cues. All of the cues are auto-followed. Some of them are within a 1/100th of a second. Some of them are within 15 seconds of each other. So that was a huge challenge and a lot of fun, and part of the large consumption of time. There were days where I would spend 4 to 6 hours on 30 seconds of the song.
I believe things are going wrong, and the night goes on and on. All your dreams have flown away, and the sun won't shine today. The lights go down, want you, baby. The lights go.
So in all, a lot of hard work, a lot of physical and mental labor put into this. It's what we do as lighting designers. I enjoyed this project, and as I talked about in my narrative, it was outside of the normal scope of our theatrical season, but it did tie into the School of Performing and Visual Arts season with Revelry. So I was glad that we were able to include this and create something in the actual theater. I hope you enjoy the upcoming show.
Lonely, but trying to be so proud. And just as I turn around, the lights go down. I believe things are going wrong, and the night goes on and on. All your dreams have flown away, and the sun won't shine today. The lights go down, want you, baby. The lights go down, need you, baby. The lights go down, and there's no one around. The lights go down.
From The Warrior of Light by Paulo Coelho. A warrior of light knows that he has much to be grateful for. Angels help him in his struggle, thus allowing him to give it his best. His companions say he's so lucky, and the warrior does sometimes achieve things far beyond his capabilities. That is why at sunset he kneels and gives thanks for the protective cloak surrounding him. His gratitude, however, is not limited to the spiritual world. He never forgets his friends, for their blood mingled with his on the battlefield. A warrior does not need to be reminded of the help given him by others. He is the first to remember and make sure to share with them any rewards he receives.
Close your eyes and begin to relax. Take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Concentrate on your breathing. With each breath, you become more relaxed. Imagine a brilliant white light above you. Focus in on this light as it flows through your body. Allow yourself to drift off as you fall deeper and deeper into a more relaxed state of mind. Now, as I count back from 10 to 1, you will feel more peaceful and calm. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. You will enter a safe place where nothing can harm you. 5, 4, 3, 2. If at any time you need to come back, all you must do is open your eyes. 1.
Safe in the light that surrounds me, free of the fear and the pain. My subconscious mind starts spinning through time to rejoin the past once again. Nothing seems real, I'm starting to feel lost in the haze of a dream. And as I draw near, the scene becomes clear, like watching my life on a screen. Hello, Victoria, so glad to see